Have you ever felt like you're just a walking contradiction? Like there's some kind of hidden logic running your life that you just can't seem to crack. Well, it turns out that a lot of our most confusing traits, they aren't flaws at all. They're actually part of a secret internal operating system. So, let's dive into this. Okay, think about this. You've got these massive, incredible dreams. You can see the future you want so clearly. But when it comes time to actually take that first step, it feels like you're running into a brick wall. Society loves to label this lazy, but what if that's not what's happening at all?
Or hey, how about this one? You genuinely love your friends. You crave that deep connection. But the second someone says, hey, I'll come over, this quiet dread just sets in. Why does your own home, your sanctuary, suddenly feel like a stage where you have to put on a performance?
And here's a real head scratcher. You get a full 8 hours of sleep, you do everything right, but you wake up feeling heavy, kind of disoriented. Then on another night, you get maybe 5 or 6 hours, and you wake up feeling sharp, clear, and ready to go. What is going on there? Here's the most important point of all of this. These things aren't signs that you're broken. They are perfectly logical outputs from your own unique personal operating system. It's time we stopped trying to fix ourselves and instead started to understand our own programming. Let's kick things off with the first principle. So your brain's #1 job, and this might surprise you, isn't actually to make you happy. It's to keep you alive, using the least amount of energy possible. Seriously, it's a master of optimization, always looking for shortcuts and efficiencies. And that single drive explains so much of our behavior.
Take sleep, for example. Your brain doesn't really measure rest in total hours. Nope, it measures it in cycles, and each one of these cycles lasts about 90 minutes. This single fact completely changes everything about how you should be approaching rest.
And here's why that's so important. 8 hours sounds perfect, right? But that timing could be yanking you right out of the middle of a deep restore-to-sleep cycle. That's the phase where your body is doing its most critical repair work. It's why you feel so groggy. But 7.5 hours? Well, that's 5 complete 90-minute cycles. It aligns perfectly with your brain's natural rhythm, so you wake up feeling clear and refreshed because the job was actually finished.
This whole efficiency drive also explains why we resist massive goals. Your brain sees a huge project and it immediately sounds the alarm, right? It calculates this huge energy cost and just slams on the brakes. Hello, avoidance mode. The really elegant solution to this comes from a Japanese concept called Kaizen, which is all about making improvements that are so small they feel almost effortless.
So instead of the totally overwhelming goal of, say, write a book, the commitment is just read 1 page. Instead of, I gotta get in shape, it's simply do 1 push-up. These tiny little actions are like a secret back door that lets you bypass your brain's threat response. They're too small to trigger the alarm, but they build this unstoppable momentum over time. Okay, let's move on to our second principle and see how this all connects. So while your brain is busy managing energy, your nervous system is constantly scanning for threats. And I'm not just talking about physical threats, but emotional ones too. Its #1 goal is to keep you safe. And this instinct can show up in some really surprising ways. And this brings us right back to that ambition paradox. That feeling of laziness, it's not a character flaw. It's your nervous system flagging a giant goal as a potential threat. A threat of failure, of uncertainty, of just overwhelming pressure. Avoidance is simply a protective mechanism kicking right in. Our nervous system's programming often starts really early. Take a process called parentification. This is when a child is basically forced to take on the emotional responsibilities of an adult, becoming a confidant or a mediator or a caregiver for their own parent. An experience like that can fundamentally rewire their nervous system, hardwiring it for hyper-responsibility and a state of constant alert that can last a lifetime. This threat detector is also incredibly active in our relationships. It's what helps us feel the difference between a friend who protects our vulnerability and one who exploits it. Your nervous system often senses these patterns long before your conscious mind is even ready to admit that there's a problem.
And this really shows us the incredible ways we adapt. What looks like calm on the outside can actually be one of 4 very different internal strategies. Are you wearing the mask, hiding an internal crisis? Are you the survivor, kind of numb from past pain? Maybe you're the strategist, finding calm only through constant overthinking and planning. Or have you reached true calm, a peace that comes from radically accepting reality? Each one is a logical, learned response from your nervous system.
Okay, finally, let's talk about the third layer of your operating system. For a lot of people, the mind isn't wired for surface-level noise, trends, and small talk.
No, it's wired for depth, for meaning, and for authenticity. And that preference shapes absolutely everything.
So why do some people jump on every single trend while others just couldn't care less? It often boils down to this. Are you seeking extrinsic validation, approval from the outside, or intrinsic validation, where your self-worth is grounded in your own internal standards? A mind that's wired for depth just doesn't need all that noise.
And this explains why having only a few friends is so often misunderstood. It's not a social failure. It's actually a sign of a mind that has zero tolerance for fake behavior, that needs longer to recover from social energy, and that simply prefers depth over quantity every time.
And these habits reflect that exact same wiring. A quietly intelligent mind often enjoys silence as a productive space. It questions the obvious, and it focuses on managing its energy, not just its time. It's all about prioritizing that deep processing over any kind of surface-level performance.
So, we have these three really powerful forces at play. The brain's drive for efficiency, the nervous system's constant hunt for threats, and the mind's deep desire for depth. They aren't separate functions, they're all woven together. So now, let's bring it all together and see what this personal blueprint looks like when it's fully assembled.
Your personal operating system is constantly running these three programs in the background. You've got the efficiency engine managing your energy, your threat detector keeping you safe, and your depth processor filtering for what's real and meaningful. They all work together, all the time.
So, the most crucial point of this whole thing is this. The goal isn't to fight your programming or to label your natural tendencies as flaws. The real goal is self-mastery through self-understanding. It's about learning to work with your own internal logic, not against it.
There's this beautiful Japanese concept called wabi-sabi. It's the art of finding beauty in things that are imperfect or aged or incomplete. Your supposed flaws, your quirks, your contradictions, they are not failures. They're the unique, beautiful marks of your own personal journey.
So instead of seeing your internal wiring as a flaw that needs to be fixed, what if you saw it as a guide, a map to a more authentic way of living, of working, of connecting? Your personal blueprint isn't the problem. It's the answer. The only question left is, what is it telling you?